when you pull on that jersey, you represent yourself and your teammates. And a name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. Get that through your head.
And here we go.
And it is no good. He missed it. Are you kidding me? The season can't end like that.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Some goofball in a hat and a red shirt. Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs to the 50. He runs to the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms. Bare-chested. Somebody stop that man.
And we're back. Welcome back to Nobody Ever Tells Me Anything. I am your host of the program, Tyler Falk. Glad to have you with us here for this one, as we're back after a pretty extended absence. As most of you probably already know, I came down with a case of COVID. And just as most of you that have had COVID know before, that bugger doesn't go away easily. So it took me a lot longer to recover than I thought I would, but, you know, I'm back. I'm back. And, not a moment too soon. We got a quarter of the way through this young SFL season, or thereabouts, we're gonna call it. And it's time for a Quarter Season Carnival. So that means we're gonna be giving out some prizes to a few teams. We'll be taking a look, just as a whole, as a recap of maybe week 2 and 3 that I missed or didn't really get a whole lot of chance to cover. So strap yourselves in. There's a lot to cover, a lot to go over, and let's just get right into it, right? So when I was looking at maybe some of the teams that I thought maybe were surprising, or maybe thinking that, did I predict them to do this well? You know, by and large, a lot of my predictions were right on point. Maybe not in the case of London, however. I had them going 2-1. I had maybe Chad Neville's throwing a wrench into the plans of his former club in London after becoming the owner of Indianapolis in week 1. But, well, that didn't happen. And surprisingly, the offense went in a completely different direction. Johnny Pickler hasn't had to throw the football a whole lot, and it's led to a very nice rushing attack. However, I'm giving the London Knights a gilded armor set. Here is why I think their 3-0 is probably, I wouldn't really say undeserved, but I think there's something to be said about going 3-0. Now, you've played 2 expansion teams in Indianapolis and, according to Johnny Pickler, his new doormat in Canton. And you've played Tulsa. The only reoccurring team from seasons past. Weeks 1 through 3 are always hit or miss for a bunch of teams, especially newcomer teams. You have no idea what to expect out of them. You have no idea what to expect out of how well they're going to do or how poorly they're going to do. And I think that was the case with how London, again, still I think are going to take this division. Take the Atlantic, or not Atlantic Division, what am I talking about? Taking the North Division. But I do think this 3-0 is not going to last forever. We can't really go back into seasons past and take a look at Indianapolis or take a look at Canton's season history and look at how well Robert Merrill's doing. And Robert Merrill has had a fantastic start to the season. Let it not be overstated. But you're playing against two teams that have never set field to an SFL field of competition before, and Tulsa, who the last two seasons have been in the bottom 5, or in the case of last season, the worst team in terms of defending the run. I think London took a look at this schedule and, like any other good team, decided to say, you know what? We're going to play against these teams' weaknesses. To the two expansion teams, we're going to play a different style of football than they have seen in our past. We are not going to throw the football a whole lot like we did last season. We are going to run the ball. Merrill's going to get a whole bunch of touches. It's going to throw some teams for a loop. That's what it did for these first three teams. Two teams we didn't know about, a team that struggled against the run. Now, London's going to have a couple of tough tests coming up. I'm not saying that they're not going to do well this season. What I am saying is that now London is going to have to play Motor City, a 2-1 team, which out of the gate has done fairly well. Then they play Sioux Falls, another one of the probably the toughest defense they'll face so far, and then the up-and-coming Minnesota Legend, who we'll talk a little bit later, but London has done well. They have game planned well, but do not look at this 3-0 start and think that London is going 12-0. I don't see it happening. I still think London's going to lose a game before their first 6 games are through. I probably think it's coming against Sioux Falls. I think they will beat Motor City, regardless of how their social media portrays it. But I think London will have a notch in that loss column before the end of week 6. So that is where we start with the Quarter Season Carnival prizes, awards. We'll see what happens. But Gilded Armor set for the London Knights. And we said we'd talk about Minnesota and the rest of the expansion teams. And so far, the Minnesota Legend are the classiest of the bunch, taking down Sioux Falls at home in their home opener, becoming the first expansion team to take down a non-expansion team in season 19. The Legend have a very good defense, at least through the first 3 games. Now, Minnesota could not handle, or not contain, I should say, Sioux Falls. Allowed a couple of third downs, which Sioux Falls' offense, I was very surprised and very happy to see them convert on third down a whole bunch of time versus Minnesota. However, the Legend turned things around in week 3, and their offense started to pick up the pace, and they had a really nice outing versus their week 3 opponent in Queen City, who are going through a massive rebuild. The Legend defense, I think, are going to have, or at least have had, the most consistent defense amongst the expansion teams. They've had one of the most consistent defenses in the league to this point. The stats back it up, top 10 in a bunch of categories: passing yards, rushing yards, touchdowns. Only 3 touchdowns allowed so far this season for Minnesota. The Legend defense has done really well. And since we're talking about expansion, Seattle and Canton struggling a little bit. Canton let up a 30-point comeback to Indianapolis in that second half, in the later part of that first half, into the second half, and Canton would lose that game. Now, I've heard, and we saw the meme, especially in the NETMA server, that maybe some of us are drinking too much of that Canton Kool-Aid. And for the first 3 weeks, they might be onto something. Canton has not been able to establish themselves through 4 quarters of play. They did really well to get out the blocks versus Indy in week 2, but weeks 1 and 2, and just like the second half of that week 2 game, Canton's in a little bit of trouble to begin their inaugural campaign. Seattle, well, they boasted week 1. Ethan Kai boasted me at the convention that, hey, we scored the most points out of every expansion team in week 1. Well, they're also letting up the most points throughout this season, this young season amongst all expansion teams. So we find Minnesota leading. If we were to put, it would be a perfect division, the expansion division. Minnesota's leading the expansion division. 2 wins to the next closest team would be Indy with a win, and then Canton in Seattle, of course, 0-3. For the hope of those other franchises that have yet to find a win, I hope those guys can find a win. Canton's got a tough game in Tulsa in week 4, and Seattle is on a bye before they play Baltimore in week 5. Tough. Loving the banter in chat, especially from Hunter Norwood. I'll just leave it at that. Can't win, he says. I'm not going to say they can't win until they can't win a game, which I don't think will happen. I think Canton will win a game. I think Seattle's going to win a game too. They need to come out with a different game plan for Baltimore and Portland, though. Otherwise, their back half of the schedule for Seattle, well, they play London, Vancouver, Canton, Motor City, Queen City, Portland again. Play Portland twice. There's a win in there. There's a win in there for Seattle. Okay. When I was taking a look at where things stood, and I said at the beginning, I'm looking for maybe some surprises, a couple of teams that maybe, were shocking. And, well, there's a team that really shocked me in a good way. I had this team going 0-3 to start, even having them go as far as maybe 0-5 to start the season. They've already got a couple of wins. I give the Fort Worth Toros the Thunderbolt Cup. 2-1 to start this young season with a pair of very impressive victories. Denver had looked like they were a team to maybe be on the up and up from last season. They kiboshed that with a very nice win over Denver late yesterday. They beat Florida in week 2 in Florida, 20-17. A very, very shocking performance for a Florida team who, did a number on Louisiana, 9 interceptions. But the Toros were able to keep control of the football, and Fort Worth are 2-1, and they're neck and neck with Lone Star and Houston, or excuse me, not Lone Star. Lone Star is the team in the outside looking in right now. It's Houston, Fort Worth, and Mexico City that are sit in the South Division at 2-1. Lone Star in 4th position in the division after 3 games. That's surprising. That's pretty surprising. This, beyond the Mexico City being right up there at 2-1, Houston and Fort Worth having strong starts, especially Fort Worth, finally coming out of their shell, I think is fantastic for the South Division. It keeps that division very interesting. And the Toros have a very solid start to the season. Can they keep it up? Can the Toros maybe shock me even further? Toros now play Houston in Houston, then Jacksonville, and Jacksonville, struggling Jacksonville team. My goodness, 0-3? It didn't really look like it in the week 2 power rankings. I thought Jacksonville would turn things around and maybe do something versus San Diego, and they only put up 13 points. Jacksonville, 13 points. Yes, they have a new quarterback in Cyrus Jive. Maybe that's the other shocker. Jacksonville struggling to make ends meet through this early season. Maybe the bye week before they play Fort Worth in week 5 helps them out a little bit. But things aren't working right now for the Jacksonville Kings. Maybe we should start calling them the Poppers. Who knows? On to the final award, and, well, I thought this was going to be an easy start, and of course week 3 was a must-watch game for Baltimore and Vancouver, but I think it's a well-earned participation trophy for the Vultures. Now, they've already got 2 championships back-to-back, but Vancouver made them work for this 3rd win, and, well, Baltimore, again, don't like to lose games early on in the season, like to throw maybe 1 or 2 away at the end of the season to throw people off their trail just a little bit. But Baltimore maintained their impressive opening season form and come away with their 3rd victory, coming from behind, at least down by 18 points at one point to Vancouver, and come away with a come from behind victory that stuns Vancouver just a little bit. Vancouver, of course, we're going to have a tough ball game in Baltimore and had a very solid opening start. It was a good game. Just a few interceptions make the difference. It was all Vancouver's defense in the first half. It was all Baltimore's defense in the second. And kind of like a couple teams we were talking about earlier, you have to play a full 4 quarters in order to come away with a victory. But all in all, great game. But Vancouver should hold their heads high, but Baltimore come away with the participation trophy. Maybe give them the giant stuffed teddy bear as well for their troubles as well. But that is going to do it for this episode of the program. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, for another edition of the program right back here on YouTube. If you want more information about the Simulation Football League or the SFL, link to the website is down below in the description. If you want to join the NETMA community or the SFL community, if you want to join the SFL community, the link to the Discord is on the website. To join the NETMA community, you can go ahead and jump into the NETMA server. That link is down below in the description of this video. So we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.